all things that pertain to life and godliness, and that we should not run around and live a life of sin. Sorry for the background noise. I think the landscape crew is out there. Let me make sure I got volume too. I'm sorry. All right, good. So, 1 Timothy chapter 5, to all my friends that are going to tune in and take the time. Here's what I want you to think. I cannot allow the church to pay for everything that comes up in regard to my financial needs. And there's a distinction of responsibility that I think that we have lost between individual and collective. And there is a restoration movement going on. And so with that restoration movement going on, what we're going to discover is 1 Timothy chapter 5 and verse 16, when it says, if any believing man or woman has widows, let them relieve them, and do not let the church be burdened, that it may relieve those who are really widows. So there is a distinction that is made in which that we cannot allow the church to pay for something that I am individually responsible for. I mean, because we have a real, I think, well, there's a danger in the restoration movement, because we do have the poor with us, and we are all struggling, and we have areas that have needs. And this is how we're going to address these needs and how to deal with those who are responsible. And do not let the church be burdened, that it may or charge or pay for the needs of my familial indigent widow. So when I see men and I see areas of the world where there are many widows and many orphans, where are the men? And what we learn in 1 Timothy chapter 5, that those that do not provide for their own, they are worse than unbelievers. In other words, the conversation is not going to get better. And what you may say about yourself has very little bearing because of what you're doing or failing to do in your area of responsibility. We cannot allow the church to pay for the needs of our familial indigent widows. It says so there. And the church will have to pay for widows of a specific type. In other words, there is a focus of how the money is to be spent benevolently. And when we discover this about being benevolent, then how can we go in and begin to pay preachers thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, whatever it is? It's just crazy. I mean, I get supported. Thank you. The money I'm supported with, I go to a job right now and help, collectively provide that support. But here is the reality. I don't care, how you want to define this. If I cannot allow the church to pay for the needs of my familial indigent widow, if anyone does not provide for his own, especially those of his own household, he's denied the faith and worse than an unbeliever, 1 Timothy chapter 5 and verse 8. How can I refuse the church to pay for my familial indigent widow, but I can allow the church to pay for the ball team? To formulate and pay for, subsidize the softball team, or to build and maintain a coffee shop, or to build and maintain happen. And what has happened to the church, and why are we needing revival? Because we see what has led to the church that is self-serving. There are responsibilities to be met by the church, and I believe they're being neglected. I go to the Good Shepherd retirement community, and there are widows there. I've been there 15 years. I don't see elders from other congregations. There's been times where I've had, it's an incredible thing. You see on the Lord's Day, widows, believing Christians, and I take the Lord's Supper to them, and we collectively gather together as a church. And they may not be able to get out, but you would think that the family of believers would be there. Don't let the church be burdened that it may relieve those who are really widows. So we have a responsibility to those that are widows. Don't let the church pay for some things so she can take care of the things that she has been instructed to take care of. And so that's why we make the distinction. And at the end of the day, distinguishing between the church and the individual, some people say, well, whatever the church can do, I can do individually. Well, no, that's not true. Deuteronomy, 1 Timothy chapter 5, it says, but if anyone has widows, a widow has children and grandchildren, let them first show piety at home and repay their parents. The church can't show piety at home for me. That's what he's saying. So everything the church can do, I have individual responsibility. Provide for his own, verse 8. Marry and bear children. Guide the house. There is, we have responsibilities. This is the problem. If we begin to take our responsibility, give it to the church, and they just give me money. And, preachers that, kind of give me money. Not the Apostle Paul that I'm content. Well, if I get money, that's great. I'm supported, and I praise the brethren that are supporting me, and I'm so thankful, and I am a blessed man. But you also may have to make tents. And we provide for our own. And this is actually in verse 4, this is what pleases God. For this is good and acceptable before God. And if someone refuses, he can say, I have faith in Jesus Christ, that he has denied the faith. Worse than an unbeliever, friends. So when we begin to say, hey, it doesn't matter, let's just build this $2 million gymnasium or this $1 million kitchen, and we're just going to have parties in here to recreate ourselves. I can't let the church pay for my widow's needs, but I can let the church do that? Come on. Why are we doing this? I mean, and there are... people say, well, you're reaching too far in 1 Corinthians 11. Well, they're about taking the Lord's Supper, coming together. But, the solution was not build a bigger place and separate and have they had a distinction. And do you not have houses to eat and drink in? Let all things be done unto edification. In Matthew 18, you got problems, individual problems. You work it out together individually. If not, you take a friend with you. If not, then you take and tell it to the church. That's the distinction between the church and the individual. Show piety at home. Provide for your own. Marry, bear children, guide the house, And we don't go out and do fundraisers, and this is to my brethren overseas as well. Our money is collected on the first day of the week by the local members. If you are in a poor area, then that'll be very low. If there are specific needs that must be met, then you need support, and I understand that. But that's not the condition upon which the church is going to exist. The church is going to exist because you voluntarily, that is, of your giving, ministering, preaching, build the church. It's not built for you, and we don't build it with money. We build it with the gospel and the souls of men and women. And how we do raise funds as individuals. I go to work. If a man refuses to work, neither let him eat. Then the individual. I've got this. It's my oversight. That's in Acts the 5th chapter. While it was your own, Ananias and Sapphira gave the money. It changed ownerships. Peter said, while it was within your possession, was it not your own? And so here's how we raise money, and we contribute, we pay taxes, we provide for our family, we maintain good works. But the local church is from offering, overseen by local elders, and it's for the purpose of preaching the gospel and relieving needy saints. So, whose money is it? Acts the 5th chapter, 1 through 4. Just to give you a very quick picture. Ananias and Sapphira sold their possessions. They sold their money. It was their money. While it remained, was it not under your own power? Verse 4. What did I do? Oop. Hold on. Oh, I bumped. There we go. Whose money was it? There you go. Their own. They sold their possession, and while it remained it was in their power, and when it was given, that is, on the first, when they gave the money to the apostles, it changed ownership. And so that's very important, guys, because now we can't do with it whatever we want to do. The contribution is commanded by God, but the money belongs to us as the church. Somebody say, well, it's the Lord's money. Well, no, it's our money to do with it what the Lord has instructed or authorized. And we don't just go do whatever we want to do. The money must be used to fulfill the obligations God has placed on the local church. 1 Timothy 5 makes a big deal about that to a young evangelist that's going to go forward in a time of poverty and say, don't just become handing out money to people. And I mean, even specifically talk about their lives as far as to be taken into the number, which means churches can completely support another individual. They can take that person in and they are responsible for their complete need. That's what it's talking about. But here's what we see. And look, I'm going to step on some toes. And it's okay. Because, we got these kind of celebrations of the preacher schools that have been developed in Africa. And look, been a part of them, been over there and taught in them. Don't get me wrong, we need to teach the gospel and teach others how to teach the gospel. But this ceremony and this elevation, I'm afraid that we're creating denomination because we're creating professional preachers, denominational. And maybe we're not denominational in our teaching, but when we formulate the structure like a denomination and we begin to do these kinds of things, I see brethren laying their hands on men and praying for them. But remember Tom telling me about the goat from years ago, and when he was a young man and he took 10 years later, 12 years later, calls me and says, today I took a widow a goat. So there was a man learned the gospel 12 years prior and was conveying to me, who had been a part of that teaching, I took a widow a goat. I didn't get... Are we graduating professional, paid to preach preachers? And if we are, then we need to rethink what we're doing, because the end result is men who are visiting the fatherless and widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. That's the individual responsibility. The things that you have heard from me, the Apostle Paul said, among many witnesses, commit these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. So this is what we do, and what we have learned and received and heard and saw in him. That is, he knew how to have, he knew how to have not. But the God of peace will be with you. That is, he worked. He had a work ethic. He knew how to receive. He knew how to give. But whatever he was doing, it was for the purpose of glorifying God and meeting his individual responsibility and not charging the church. In fact, Paul went to a great extent at times to not receive money from a church so that they wouldn't accuse him of doing things to be paid. So help us to learn. When I was leaving 12 years ago, 14 years ago now in Africa, and he was in Nairobi, and we were in a slum. I spent the night there before I left the next day, and run into this fella, and that's who I'd like to reach and pray that we do, teaching the gospel. The church does not have the authority to build and maintain other institutions through which we do her work. We do it direct, and the gates of Hades are not going to prevail against her. It's direct and to the need. I will build my church. The Lord has accomplished that. Help us to help each other. I wrote this poem, and I'm going to close with it. And it's about our love for each other. and what it accomplishes. Thank you, God, for love, that of deed and truth. Without this kind of love, we are bereft of proof. But when our love is real and comes a shining through, it means we have assured our hearts of eternity with you. Thank you, God, for love and the gift of your dear Son. The victory of faith is ours. Life's battles we have won. In this gift we understand, and now we clearly see. Indeed, it is more blessed to give than to receive. May God bless you in your day as you seek to do the things that he has provided for you, the opportunities he has set before you.